Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes in public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. The show is produced by the POCUA and is founded upon its Soundness Initiative. This episode is sponsored by the Finest Service Organization, a provider of line-of-duty death loan protection through many of our POCUA institutions. Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio. This is a real pleasure in that I'm able to do an interview in person, and I have three great law enforcement professionals. We'll start with Captain Reggie Rader to my left here, and then right in the middle, and the cutest one of all of us is Tracy Shevlin, who is the sheriff. Your sheriff. That's the title that it says out here. Project Assistant. And we have, I know I'm going to mess this up, but we're going to give it a shot, Jeremy Bozarth. Yep. I got it. All right. And what was your title?
I'm a police officer, but I'm an assistant project manager out there too.
Awesome. Well, I'm here. I know I'm going to get this wrong too, at the Las Vegas Training Institute.
Right. Every police officers love the acronym, so it's the JETI.
The JETI. Okay.
Joint Emergency Training Institute.
Yeah, so they were smart enough to give me, as an idiot, a brochure so I could just look at it and say it and remember it, but I wasn't that bright. So, yeah, I had the distinct pleasure to tour this facility, I want to say like 2 months ago in conjunction with the Public Safety Foundation Summit, and I was blown away. This is amazing. It's my opinion that law enforcement is really across the country lacking in resources, and I'm a pessimistic person by nature, but one thing that does my heart really well is what we're doing for law enforcement, the entrepreneurship, the technology, and what we're doing, and this is a great example of that because this is an amazing facility. Yeah, tell me a little bit about the journey, how hard was it to get this thing done? How many years was this in the making?
So this started around 5 years ago. And it was always kind of an idea for bringing all of law enforcement together, or really all first responders. And I will say this, in the Las Vegas Valley, we've been fairly progressive as far as relationships with our fire departments, with our other agencies. Anyone that's visited Las Vegas, you think of the Las Vegas Strip, the glitz and glamour, which is indeed Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's jurisdiction. But Clark County is very, very, very wide. And Las Vegas Metro Police is the largest agency, but we have several sister agencies that we work with on a daily basis. They cover one side of the street, we cover the other. So really getting everybody on the same page. And MACTAC is what we learned in Mumbai with the terror attacks in Mumbai. We needed a joint response where there were consistent tactics by multiple first responding agencies. So really handling the active assailant, back then it was active shooter situations, and preparing for those types of things. That was what kind of unified all the departments together, where we're not so worried about what's your use of force policy, what's our use of force policy. Hey, let's get pen to paper and let's come up with some good tactics, good lesson plans that we can all agree on. So if you have 4 different color uniforms and agencies showing up to this active shooter at this location, they can gear up and they can go as a team and they can end that threat. So that's what really started us working together with all the other different departments. And the MACTAC concept for us, I believe it's more West Coast. A lot of the West Coast agencies, California trains very similar, so does Utah and Arizona. But that really taught us the importance of getting on the same page for an event like that. Now the way that we train, 5 years ago we looked at bringing this together, but then there's always the issue of funding, right? We know if something is paid for by the government, it is going to take a very, very long time.
Whoa. You mean things that the government is in charge of and or gives money to takes a long time?
Shocker, I know.
Yeah, holy crap.
So our sheriff had a lot of foresight in that, and our undersheriff at the time, Kevin McMahill, our sheriff, Joe Lombardo, said we need to raise these funds privately. And we feel like there's a need to do that, there's an appetite to do that, and it's not just supporting us. That's why we don't call it the Metropolitan Police Department Training Center. We call it the JETI because it's encompassing so many different aspects of that. So they were able to, over those 5 years, go out and seek money, lots of donations, private donations, to really get this thing going. And I do personally believe if this was a typically government-funded facility, we might just be breaking ground right now. But the leadership that was provided on this project has allowed us to have this wonderful facility with room to grow. There's several acres that we have a 10-year plan. This thing in 10 years will be even better than it is today.
It does my heart really good to see different first responder organizations working together. In my hometown of Chicago, that doesn't always happen. In other cities, unfortunately, it's not just police and fire. There are different police agencies that just don't get along and share information, much less, go and have a beer with each other. So it's great to see and hear, as I heard in the tour, that there were not only other police departments, but I think you mentioned that there's a military base that wants to use this, that firefighters want to use it, that you have other first responder public safety organizations that are going to play a part in using and training together at this facility. Did I get that right, or was I just did a neuron not fire that day?
You got it right. I feel like you've read this pamphlet already.
I have not, but I promise you I will. So tell us a little bit more about that, the other organizations that are going to come and train with you and do some things.
So we saw really, the last 2 years, if you take a look at how policing has changed. Now, granted, we were working on this project 5 years ago, but it's never rang more true on how important it is to train together than the incidents we saw.
Right.
And I'll bring up a couple. Kim, I believe it was Kim Potter, the female officer who mistakenly pulled her handgun when she thought it was her taser.
Right.
We saw the damage that did to the community. We saw on a national scale what it did. Sadly, many lives were impacted by that. The suspects, as well as the officer who was convicted and found guilty. We know she did not intend to kill that individual. That is 100% a training issue. And this is from just total anecdotal. I don't know the history of there, so I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but what I believe happened there, and talking to some of our other trainers here, is it was a lack of training. And there's things you can do to safeguard. One of them is just the way you deploy your gear. For us, we have to have a cross-draw taser, so the muscle memory thing isn't there. But if you have a career of every time you go through training, the scenario ends with you pulling out your firearm and you pulling the trigger, or every time you're thrown into a stress-inducing situation, whether it be real life or in training, you pull that gun out, that's what's going to happen. So we believe she intended to pull her taser out, but you have to have an environment where you can simulate the stresses that are going to occur out there, right? At 3 a.m. in the darkest hour of town, in the worst part of town. You need to have something to where it's not just, hey, we're here for training, let's high-five each other. Oh, I got that scenario wrong. Okay, move on to the next one. So the way we found out about doing that the best is by pooling all the resources together, getting all the trainers together, because what happens on one side of the street in a different jurisdiction can have profound impact on us on this side of the street. If somebody has a mistake of fact shooting, we saw what happened with some mistake of fact shootings, or just the bad inappropriate uses of force with George Floyd, and how that swept the nation. We had civil unrest here and riots and disturbances here that happened, and we never thought that would happen with an agency that was so far removed from us. So albeit somebody that shares the same valley, it's just important for us to all be on the same page when we train, because we are one huge brotherhood and sisterhood of first responders. And then peeling that layer back even more, the fire department and the paramedics now are brought into that, because as the line of what is a police matter versus what's a socioeconomic matter, the mental health things, the majority of the people we get into critical incidents with and officer-involved shootings with have some history of mental health. And we know that as a country, we've really failed that segment of the population. And it's just defaulted to be a police response because nobody else wants to deal with that. So by bringing the people that can really help, the paramedics and the medical professionals, back into the fold with that, so we can kind of deal with it with a mutual response, is hopefully going to help us maintain legitimacy in the community by reducing those officer-involved shootings.
Yeah, there's so much to unwrap there. A lot of things that I've had the pleasure to talk about in Public Safety Talk Radio before. And it's my belief, and I've said this several times, I'm not on the side of defend the police. I'm not on the side of defund the police either, obviously.
Right.
I think that there's a middle ground that we're missing as a society. And if you want to write something on a piece of cardboard and staple a stick to it and put it up on the street, it's develop the police. And I think there are unfortunate incidents that happen. But what can we learn from that? I think that the Kim Potter situation that you mentioned is a perfect example. It's my belief that we need to throw more resources at police, but in the right way.
Right.
Let's not buy them more guns and bulletproof vests. Although I'm fine with that. Let's get more mental health training. Let's get better training ahead of time. It was ironic because that very Kim Potter case came up in an interview I did with the folks from the Prosecutors podcast, where they were doing a case on a nurse that mistakenly gave somebody the wrong medication and she ended up dying. And there was a lot of talk about the training, the stress of the job, and so forth, and how much came into that. But at the end of the day, she had a responsibility to care for that person. And we could talk about stress all the time and how it affects you, but as much as I feel bad about what happened to that officer, you have a responsibility to pull your taser when you're supposed to pull your taser, and a responsibility to pull your firearm when you pull your firearm. And I think that training, makes a lot of sense. Now a word from one of the POCUA's proud business partners, OfficerPrivacy.com. OfficerPrivacy.com was founded by Pete James, a law enforcement professional with over 25 years of experience. Pete wanted to find a way to help law enforcement officers protect themselves and their families. So he formed a team to create a way to quickly identify and remove their information from certain sites. OfficerPrivacy.com is the result. This service is already offered through a select few of our POCUA organizations. As a listener of Public Safety Talk Radio, you can take advantage of a special offer from OfficerPrivacy.com. Go to OfficerPrivacy.com/POCUA, and when you sign up, you'll get 2 additional bonuses. In addition to removing your personal information from the top 30 people search sites, they will give you your first 2 months of monitoring free. This is a value of $39.98. In addition to that, you'll receive a cell phone privacy device, a $19.99 value. This prevents data from leaving your cell phone when you use public charging stations and is a must when traveling. So go to officerprivacy.com/POCUA today to take advantage of this offer and to protect your privacy. Organizations who are members of the POCUA and are interested in offering the service directly to their members, contact us at POCUA@btcinc.org.
The one thing I would like to say about training is every police department, certainly here at Vegas Metro and in the Valley, officers have a responsibility to hold the sanctity of life to the utmost importance.
Sure.
And when everyone wants to talk about defunding the police or pro or anti-police, one banner I think everybody can get behind is better preparing your police.
Yes.
Right, and a lot of the budgets are already there to buy the bulletproof vests, right, the handguns, the things that you need, the tools to do the job. But I would urge anybody looking to do something similar to this, that should really be your narrative, because everybody, whether it's social justice warriors, the NFL, a sports franchise that you might think is anti-police, how can they not get behind, hey, have a reality-based training center, putting money towards training our officers so we can limit the amount of deadly force situations that they have. We can teach them on how to properly de-escalate, how to force transition, how to communicate and de-escalate to have a better peaceful resolution. So that's something that I know when Sheriff Lombardo and our undersheriff at the time, Kevin McMahill, were going around talking to the community stakeholders, people could really get behind. Because we're not an occupying force. We truly are partners with the community, and we are only as effective as the community wants us to be, and they allow us to be. And the way we did police work 20 years ago is different than 10 years ago, and I will say the way we do police work now is different than just 2 years ago. Diving into more of the training aspect, a lot of police departments are doing a better job at having those startled responses. An officer shows up, does a person pull out a cell phone or is it a gun? Do you pause? Do you communicate with each other? A lot of agencies are getting better at that. Something we did to add another layer of it is the supervisory aspect of that, right? And we look at some of these use of force situations that have been prolonged or where there's multiple officers arrived, probably doing stuff that is too far, that should have been stopped. A lot of times the supervisor's there. Was that supervisor who one day is a peer with them and then the next day is their boss, put through the same type of stress-inducing training that we put our officers through, So maybe it's not necessarily tactics, but you have to put them in an environment where they have to take a step back and see all of the pieces going on. Is there a crossfire situation? Is that excessive force now? Do I need to get involved there? What's the crime scene component of it? So that's something we like to do here at the Reality Based Center, is have the supervisors be put through the paces to really have to supervise up to that job, because the absence of training, you're going to police down to, or you're going to react to the last level of training that you feel comfortable with. So we really have to do a good job at getting those first and second line leaders out there to be true leaders and not revert back to just being another officer on scene.
Correct. I completely agree with that. And again, I am, as a civilian, amazingly impressed with what Las Vegas is doing here. I think that it's probably one of the models out there for some of the other police departments to look at. Let's backtrack a little bit, because I remember from the tour that I took, we did talk about that very, very unfortunate incident here in Las Vegas at, I believe it was the Harvest Fest, the active shooter out of the Mandalay Bay and so forth. And I've heard people, well, why didn't police know more? Why didn't we do things beforehand? And I always remind them, on September 10th, 2001, nobody ever dreamed that a bunch of crazy bastards would get into planes and start taking down buildings.
Right.
Nobody ever thought that somebody was going to blow out a window in the Mandalay Bay and start shooting people. It just never happened before. Now, unfortunately, it's happened. And I remember you mentioning that, as unfortunate as that is, you learned a lot from that incident to help not have that happen again. Can you talk a little bit about that day and talk about a little bit about what's been learned and what's being done now?
Absolutely, and I would urge any of the first responders listening, if they would like us to come out. I just 2 weeks ago was in Kansas teaching at a law enforcement thing there, because we want everybody to learn the evil that our valley faced that day and how we were able to overcome it, and then the lessons that we learned. But on 1 October, we had a gunman kill 58 people that day, and sadly 2 more have died from their injuries since then, so it's up to 60. And it was the largest mass shooting that we've had in modern history. And some of the things that we learned are the internal things that were being done at some of these properties really needed to be revamped. Right? We want everybody to feel welcome when they come to Vegas, but there's a safety component as well. If you walk around Times Square, you see a lot of officers with rifles and MP5s. That was an environment that before 1 October we didn't really have here in Vegas. It was supposed to be a little bit looser, a little bit more welcoming. You're allowed to walk down the street on the resort quarter with a beer in your hand, with alcohol. So for whatever reason, right, wrong, or indifferent, the posturing was a little different. The music festival was targeted by this evil individual, and when we found out after the fact, looking at his computer, he had Googled various outdoor concerts, multiple schools, children's museums, Fenway Park, Venice Beach, but he happened to choose our valley to carry out that attack. If you look at when the time the shooting started happening, the amount of chaos that was there, some of it was the fireworks that were going off, there was microphones on stage that remained on, so it was really hard to triangulate where the shooting was happening, just from a boots on the ground perspective. So we've worked with the partners that come here now and do other events. We have a designated plan if something were to happen, what they should be doing. And I won't go too much into that, but from the time the shooting happened, it took 10 minutes for officers to get up to the 32nd floor, and the individual decided to take his own life because he is the coward that he is. He took his own life, but in 10 minutes time, he was able, with that small arsenal that he had, able to end the lives of 58 people. So there's other things that the casinos are doing now, the challenges of traversing a high rise. There's a lot more officers for special events that are stationed inside those properties so they can have a quicker response. The casinos themselves have response teams. They have the way that it was configured, it was a very, very long hallway, really a fatal funnel that just went on forever to get to this end room. So now they have some ballistic shields on rollers that you can actually traverse and egress up to that area and have some protection as well. But the other thing we learned that day are some of the things that we had been doing that helped us prevail. And I truly believe that the body count would be a lot higher than 60 if we didn't have such a good working relationship with the other partners. I was the operations chief that night, and at the command post and staging area, uniforms from every agency were showing up, and they were seamlessly put. It didn't matter if it was a North Las Vegas police officer supervisor with a metro officer and a school police officer, and they were able to go as a response team to go seek out a mission. And then the fire department as well. The rescue task force that we do, where we provide a level of protection for the fire department while they go into those warm zones, and even on that night we're going into hot zones to start triaging and providing aid for those individuals. That came together because of the relationships we had previously, and it's just something we've expanded upon. And this facility was talked about before the tragedy of 1 October ever happened, but after that incident, it really showed the need for why something like this is needed. And we, Tracy does the majority of the tours here, and Jeremy, I would urge anybody that's interested in doing something like this to come on out, see the way that we train, and if there's anything we can provide for you to get this on, I believe this is truly the model going forward of really sharing the resources and not just hunkering down, having that locker room mentality. If it's just our department against this department against this department, we usually have a pool of resources or funding that, if spread out or we're a little bit more innovative with how that can happen, it'll be beneficial for everybody. We just have to be willing to share.
Yeah, and I could say, as a civilian who's gone on the tour, if you're in law enforcement and you're trying to, even if you're not building a full training facility like this impressive place, building, whatever you want to call it, that we're in today, I think that it's impressive to come on out here and and talk to Jeremy, talk to Tracy, talk to Captain Rader, and see what's being done here, because I think that you can definitely take a piece from here and be able to apply it in your own department. Plus, you get to come out to Vegas, which isn't.
Who doesn't want to come to Vegas?
Well, maybe if it's like late July,
True.
not so much. But Captain Rader will travel to places like Kansas.
I went to Kansas.
Don't you get to go someplace cool like Florida or
So,
Hawaii or Manhattan at least?
I have to say this: when I was in Kansas, the Jayhawks won the championship. They were playing in New Orleans, but they won the championship. And when I was at the FBI National Academy in D.C., the Nationals won the World Series.
Wow.
So if you want your pro team to win a sport or your college team, get a hold of me. I'll come on out there around championship time, and some good things will happen.
So to all of my friends in the Chicago Police Department, sometime in late October, because I'm a big White Sox fan, have these folks come out there, because I want to see another Chicago White Sox World Championship. I'd say something with the Bears, but that's just not going to happen. But to kind of wrap up, what unfortunately happened in the mass shooting, and also bring in another aspect. I did have members of my family at that particular event. Was a cousin and a friend of my wife's, and unfortunately one got shot. Fortunately they're fine, and physically fine, psychologically, I don't know. And I know they've commented on the response from a positive angle on this, and I agree with you. It would have been a lot more than 60 had it not been the response that it was. And to get into the learning aspect of, we're not going to let that happen again. At the time of taping this, we're just after this little thing called the NFL Draft.
Yes.
And ironically, I'm staying on Koval, just in back of the link. And I got here on Friday. I will tell you, I never felt so safe. Now not so much, because you're all gone. You go down Koval, it's like a ghost town. It's like, now I'm afraid. Now I'm glad I got Captain Rader's car. Like, hey, this is kind of weird over here. But Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I wasn't here Thursday. Tremendous amount of police presence. Very, very visible. All over the place. There were helicopters above me, which kind of scared me. I don't know if that was news or if those were you guys, but in all seriousness, it truly seemed to me that you learn from past events as well. This ain't happening on our watch on this. And you had that sucker surrounded in a lot of ways. Can you talk a little bit about the preparation for something as big as the NFL Draft? And there were other things going on around here. I was at CrimeCon. I think there was an NAB conference. Because there's always a couple things going on in Vegas. But anyhow, I'll shut up. Talk about what you did for the NFL Draft ahead of time.
Well, and that's the thing about Vegas. On any given weekend, it's a mega weekend. We have Formula F1 racing coming next year. Electric Daisy is a 3-day event that just brings hundreds of thousands of people to the Valley. I had the pleasure of working the draft on Saturday, and a lot of preparation went into there. It was a New Year's Eve style event for us. for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And closing down the Las Vegas Strip to vehicle traffic doesn't happen very often, but it happened for this event.
I appreciated that as I tried to get to Bally's on Friday. That worked out really well.
I'm sure it did. But no, there was a lot of preparation that went into to planning with the NFL folks, and fortunately for us, we do so many large scale events. We're able to get the plans and modify them. But 50,000 people each day in that footprint. Not to mention all of the media that comes with it, the VIPs, the players. But really just locking that venue down and having everything else that's happening in the world, vehicles being used for weapons, right? Suicide bombers, having those things in place. And I'm not going to go into all the safety protocols that we do because we want some of those things to stay stay.
I appreciate that.
But I mean, every window that was looking down into that area, from what we learned in 1 October, those rooms have all been checked, right? And there was other people watching all of those rooms with Overwatch and rifles and snipers. So I can assure you, everybody in that area was extremely well protected. And then I know you said all the police officers left. What you don't see is we have a lot of plainclothes officers down there as well, and cameras, and but we do. That's the jewel of really of Nevada, the Las Vegas Strip, and we protect that because that is our home turf. But I'm glad you were able to be down there and you saw the good police presence. It was a very wonderful draft. The NFL were gracious guests, and they said they'll be coming back soon. And we have the Super Bowl coming in 2 years. So
so you're prepped for
doing
that.
it again. I don't know if the Raiders or the Bears will be playing in it, but maybe if they are, we can meet up again.
Well, Raiders got Devontae Adams, so unfortunately, I think that you got a better shot than my Bears. As we begin to try and wrap up here, I want to get Tracy and Jeremy into the mix here. Let's get back to this training institute, this just JETI. I'll call it by the right name for the first time in this interview. Talk about the tours. Talk about what's going on here. Talk about what people can learn here at the JETI.
So what we're sitting in now is the Building A, we call it. And we have all the instructors and mat rooms in here. We have virtual reality. And we have another program that's called a laser shot. And then next door is Building B, where we're going to have the the virtual or
we'll have a
community.
We'll have a commercial side of the community, and then we'll have a residential side of the community. So on one side of the building, it has a mezzanine. So on top, we'll have a school. We'll have breaching doors for them to practice there. We'll have a convenience store on the bottom. We'll have a casino, a motel, hotel, doctor's office. Anything that you'll find in the community is what we're trying to recreate. On the residential side, we'll have a single-story home, a two-story home, a single-wide trailer. We'll have a park area, a fourplex. So we can, under any different year, we can change it out. We can move it around. What we don't want is for our officers to be like, okay, well, we know what the scenario is going to be. They can come at us from the right or the left, but still, this is the layout of the house. So what we're trying to create is homes that we can move around the inside. So today you may go in and you're walking into the living room. Tomorrow you may go in and you're walking into a hallway, which is bedrooms on the side. So basically anything that you find in the community is what we're trying to create in Building B. Building A is mainly just admin. So we have classrooms, like Jeremy said, we have the simulation room, we have the VR room. But mainly we're just admin in this building. And then from there, for our future site, what we're looking to do is build an outdoor village, which we have 40 acres in a lands bill, and we're trying to, what we'll do there is we'll recreate the courthouse, the jail, just more of the community. We'll have 40 acres of a community just north of where we're at.
Will there be a fake 24-hour wedding chapel?
We have lots of cops that I'm sure could design that.
Yes.
Well, and then we would need the attorney's office and the divorce court.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very possible that we will take that part of downtown and recreate that down one of our streets. So from there, we want to build the best of the best. And then once we build the best, we want to build better than our best. That's our ultimate goal.
So in doing, I know that the community hasn't been built yet. I was
Right.
able to see the space, and you talked about the real life type training that you're going to have in there. Are you going to have some folks, play like a what's the word I'm looking for? Not victims, but a fake bachelorette party that's drunk and out of hand, and will Captain Raider be like the one that's getting married playing, and that's it?
Have you seen The Hangover? We're gonna recreate that The Hangover. Someone's gonna be stuck on the roof. We'll have a fake Caesar's Palace.
Well, the best part of that movie is when I can't even say his name. Got hit with the taser in the face, and the guy says, "In the face." You do that here, right?
So,
We'll show you after
a
the
funny
podcast.
side
That's
story.
okay.
I was at the academy last week, and it was Bring Your Kid to Work Day. So the academy for first inspection is dressing down the new recruits and yelling at them, and the kids are just off to the side watching. I'm like, let's get these kids in here. And someone was brought up that movie. Hey, can they tase one of the recruits? I'm like, we're not going to have them tase a recruit.
Now, I heard that there's a $10,000 prize if you choose to get tased. So can I get $10,000 on Kent? Never mind.
We
That might bounce though.
We got tased. I have a problem with taser because we got tased for free, or I think we got a T-shirt back in the day. I don't know.
I
what
got
the
tased, and
10,000
all I got was this frickin' T-shirt.
was a
Yeah.
legit T-shirt. Yeah. So
And your job.
I did
Yeah.
get
You did get
the
your job.
requirement.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll get back into serious mode. I don't like to go there too often, but we'll get back into serious mode as we begin to wrap this up, because you all have more important jobs to do than to talk to me. How, in your words, each of you, will this, maybe in, a couple sentences, how will this JETI improve the jobs of law enforcement in this metropolitan area, both in the short term and in the intermediate term?
When 1 October happened, I was just in FTEP, just beginning my career, and it was kind of like watching everybody try to work together, firefighters, EMS, police officers, security guards, was kind of scrambled around. Nobody knew how to stack together. Nobody knew how to enter the rooms. So for this to come together where security officers, everybody can come here and work. We have, Clark County Fire Department. We can use Building B there. We can bring in their fire trucks and everybody can stack and work together. What is your job? And that was one of the biggest, when I was in FTEP, I was like, there's not enough training. We need somewhere to all come and collectively train together. So this is what I pictured in my mind, I guess.
Awesome. Tracy?
Pretty much what Jeremy.
No, you can't do that. You can't say, no, what Jeremy said. No, you got to come up with something completely new.
So my aspect of the building is completely different than
Sure.
coming up with the training and being on the street. I'm a civilian as well as you are, so I haven't gone through the training that they've gone through. What I can tell you from the administrative side, because that's what I did for Metro for 14 years, or do for Metro, is to have all of the agencies come together. And I saw each agency just be within themselves, and I always wondered, well, why, if we're all training on the same line, why are we doing it separately? Why can't we just come together, be one whole training facility, and that way when we do, God forbid, if we have another issue like that, like October 1, we can know that, okay, well, I know Jeremy is going to stack behind me on this side, and I know Reggie's going to do this, and I know you're going to do that. And that's pretty much the purpose of the goal of this whole facility. Not just this building, but the whole, in a whole, we're looking at probably about 10 buildings or so down the line. As Reggie said, we've got about 10 years worth of building to do.
Yeah.
And it in my view, it probably will go further than that, because you have the FBI and they can't train here without staying on property. So with that, we need housing. With housing, we need food. We have all of this in mind. It's all down the line, years down the line. You mentioned Nellis. Nellis has brought 200 acres to the table for us to build a driving facility.
Nice.
We're currently in the works of putting that together. They're doing their turtle research right now, so they're looking for turtles and flowers, and see if they can find anything that's indigenous. Once that's complete, we're hoping to be at the point with the drawings to where we could just break ground and move forward and be done.
Well, when you
That
get
part.
that living and food space here, will it be like a Hilton or more like a Holiday Inn Express? Is it
Motel
going to be
6.
high end? Okay,
We're
well
just
then
gonna
I'm not
be very-
staying
Out.
here.
It's Vegas. We're gonna have to do buffets. Guy
Lobster tail.
Fury might have a spot. We'll do it right. We'll do it right.
That really will depend on who wants to come to the table.
True.
You
Well,
know, if Caesar's Palace wants to build us a hotel, absolutely, we will
Yeah.
be more than happy to take it. And they want to supply the restaurants within it, absolutely.
well, you know what? Tillman Fertitta is the chairman of the Houston Police Foundation, and he owns the Golden Nugget
There
and
we
Morton's
go.
and all that. So hey, Tillman,
We'll take
help
we'll take
these
a
guys
Morton's on
out.
property.
Yeah.
We
So-
do get police discount though, right?
You know what? I don't know Tillman personally, but I've had on another podcast, I've had one of his executives on the show, so we'll see what we can do. But don't think that I have like this great in or anything like that.
We're gonna hold you to that.
The best I could do is give you a phone number and an email address. So we'll end with Captain Rader. Last thoughts, and also the question of how will this enhance the performance of law enforcement in this area?
My last thought is this is indicative of where police work is going, right? Truly partnering with the community to get this facility built. And our goal is always to be the safest community in America. And the only way we can do that is by providing our officers with the tools that they need, providing our first responders with the tools that they need. And we bring up the big, active shooter incidents and the active assailant incidents, but the day in and day out job of policing that is getting increasingly harder shows why you need a place like this. It shows why police departments need to reach across policy manuals and start doing things more together. And I believe if you do start looking at your sister agencies, there's far more similarities than differences in the way that we do things. And look, and if we looked at some of the things that happened, and we had the LV&R, lateral vascular neck restraint, which was not a chokehold, but the optics on it, it looked bad, and what was going on in the nation, it was an easy thing for us to say, you know what, we actually don't use it very often, let's get rid of that, right? And then we've been able to work with some of our other sister agencies in that as well. Like, hey, as a community, how can we, as a law enforcement community, how can we better represent and serve this public? So I'll end with, it is worth it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of pitching and doing flyers and meetings and really a passion project to show why this is needed. But I feel that, I said before, it's a banner you can get behind no matter what side of the aisle you on or how you feel about policing. Having better trained police officers and better trained first responders to go out there and do the job and protect that sanctity of life is paramount in what we do. And we've seen how bad it can get if we don't have proper training, right? So let's be that beacon to make sure our officers do have the training that they need and use those unconventional streams of funding to be able to get them to do that.
We're building these facilities not just for our valley, but for the nation.
Yeah.
If there's a department, say in Georgia, that they need the training that we can assist with, we are more than happy to have them come out. There'll be a fee involved to use the facility because we do have to pay the electric bill. But it's not just for the Las Vegas Valley or the state of Nevada. It is for the nation. So we're building this with that in mind, to build it for everybody, not just our officers.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great way to end. Definitely reach out to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'll certainly, if it's okay with you, I'll put the number on the show notes for the podcast. And I've seen this in other areas. Ohio comes to mind. A couple other states where there's been some joint training where they weren't egotistical enough to say, hey, these guys are doing it better. Let's not talk about it, but hey, these guys seem to be doing it better. Let's go out there and learn from them. So I would encourage you, and I do encourage you to seek these folks out, Captain Rader, Tracy Shevlin, and Jeremy Bozarth. Thank you. Thank you for spending some time with us today. And thank you for what you do and what you're doing here. I truly believe that it's going to save lives. It's going to save lives of civilians, and it's going to save lives of some of our first responders, given what you're doing here. So a really, really sincere thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you for coming.
Public Safety Talk Radio was produced by the POCUA. The POCUA is a consortium of financial institutions serving law enforcement as well as other first responders and public safety professionals. To learn more about our association and to find one of our credit unions or service providers near you, go to www.policecreditunions.com. And always remember, if you aren't working with one of our POCUA credit unions, you're just banking with an institution that just so happens to serve first responders. As a public safety professional, you and your family deserve better. Find a POCUA credit union today.